Welcome to our session, everybody. Mind the Gap, creating continuity for your customer journeys. As much as we would love to be in the same room with you today, we're very pleased to be on your screens. It's a close second. We just wanted to thank you so much for joining us as we talk about using some pretty cool technology and data to help you deliver better experiences for your customers. My name is Lauren Harris. I work at Invoca. I'm a product manager. It basically means I work with a group of really smart engineers, and our area of focus is on integrations. So we kind of want to get data from our system out to other systems, as well as get the data from other systems back into our systems. So it's a tag team effort today, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Tamara as my co-presenter.
Hi everyone, and thanks, Lauren. It's great to be here. It's my first time with the Tealium group, and I'm super excited to be with Invoca as well. My name's Tamara Gaffney. I represent Quantum Metric, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but mainly my job at Quantum Metric is to look at data, which is so fun, and I'm going to share with you some amazingly good news stats, very, very hot off the presses, to help put into context what's happening in the world around us. We love data at Quantum Metric, so I have the opportunity to have gobs of it at my disposal.
Awesome, thank you so much. Now that you know a little bit about us, we'd like to take the opportunity to provide a brief overview about our respective companies and how we fit into the mix with Tealium. So Tamara, why don't you go first, give us the lowdown on Quantum Metric.
Yeah, and there's some terminology here that you may not have heard before. It's really not a new concept, this idea that everything has to work together. It just happens to be practically difficult sometimes, right? So we have released this new nomenclature, if you will, around what that means, and we call it continuous product design. What it really means is going all the way from the call center folks to the client success folks to the developers, the product managers, everywhere in between. How are we going to collaborate and deliver what we term is better digital product experiences faster? So that's what Quantum Metric is all about. We have lots of little pieces that go with that, but in a nutshell, that's what we do for a living.
It's always tough to kind of provide the background of super complex technologies. Invoca is sort of in the same boat. We are a call tracking and conversational analytics tool. That may be a new term for a lot of you, similar to Quantum Metric's tagline. But essentially, Invoca is able to tie the digital journey to phone calls. So that typical online to offline gap, that divide, we're a key solution to connect those two pieces of the journey. We also provide some intelligent routing capabilities. We have conversation AI, which basically means that we can discover topics discussed during a phone conversation, and we can classify outcomes or types of callers. To round out our offering, we provide a lot of integrations to get our valuable call and conversation data to other systems. So I think as we think about the partnership with Tealium, when building a tech stack, it's really important not just to pick suppliers that support your business, but also suppliers that support each other. And that's really the key to bringing continuity to the forefront. Quantum Metric and Invoca, in case you don't know, are technology partners in the Tealium partnership program. And by joining forces with Tealium, we're both able to enrich that customer profile in Tealium with some pretty unique and awesome data. Oh, my little button there we go. So one of the things that makes our partnership with Tealium work so well is that each of our companies has a very customer-centric focus, not only for our own customers, of course, but we're building solutions for our customer's customer in mind. We're all on a mission to uncover the end customer insights in our own unique ways. And we want to make that data collection automated. We want to make it scalable and actionable. So we're really looking forward to sharing a bit more about how we do that in these next slides. So let's get a lay of the land, kind of the agenda that we're going to go through. So we're going to cover why customer experience should be top of mind, the challenges as it relates to providing continuity throughout that customer journey, how to facilitate continuity and drive a more seamless experience. And then we're going to wrap it up with some key takeaways and cover some frequently asked questions. So let's go ahead and get into it.
So understanding your customers right now is more important than ever. As you have all felt this seismic shift happen, the standing joke being that who made digital transformation a bigger imperative, you know, the CMO, the CEO, or COVID-19? And the reality is that it took a fairly major situation for us all to realize that we can go a lot faster and do a lot more to transform our businesses than we ever thought humanly possible. And the reason why is because, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. One of the areas that has gotten tremendously impacted, and it is probably the reason why you're here watching this webinar today, is the call center and the support area. The shutdown of all of the call centers and moving to digital overnight pretty much, as well as the impact of trying to reduce the pressure on the call centers by pushing customers to self-serve and support areas on their websites, has created quite a wave of impact, shall we say. So let's look at some of that data. The big wave of digital consumers is coming from some new places right now. And that, I think, is a massive shift that caused a lot of frustration in user interfaces, for example. Most of these new people are coming from mobile devices, it turns out. 56% of the new visitors in our tracking are coming on a mobile device for the first time. We've heard it all before. Mobile is super important. It's never been more important than it is now. And these new visitors, it's their first impression of your digital properties. It might also be their first impression of your digital mobile apps. So with that being the case, what they're finding is that sometimes things that customers who come frequently and have typical patterns for how they use your interface, they may not understand how to use your interface. A perfect example in the grocery sector is the new older generation doing click and collect at grocery stores, trying to figure out how to interact with the grocery store applications in order to fill up their basket and schedule time. So this is kind of the situation that a lot of different sites are finding with this new impetus to go digital. So let's look what that looks like on the support side when they get frustrated. This is the traffic patterns for online support for 3 different categories. The red one is travel, the green one is retail, and the black one is business and finance. Really very interesting different patterns of growth. You can see the week of 3/8 in the travel category was more than double the amount of impact to the support pages. That actually didn't last a very long time, but it was a very quick pivot because the travel category, in some sense, hadn't really wanted to enable their online support as much because they wanted people to call their call center. If they wanted to modify a flight, cancel a flight, etc., they would rather talk to the customer. And that's still the case. However, when they became overwhelmed and call times became 5-6 hours long, then they wanted to push more into the digital support systems. So that had to happen really, really quickly. And now it's actually less burden on those support, and they're able to go back to call center and handling customers with more attention and care. However, in retail and business and finance, you can see that those are starting to ramp up and they're continuing to be higher. In fact, in the retail category, it's almost 200% more traffic going to the support pages than it was just a couple weeks earlier at the beginning of February. Let's look at the next one. I mentioned frustration. Well, you can see how frustration was getting high at the beginning of February. This is when the onslaught of new customers started to try and engage. In some cases, they got more familiar with the user interface and didn't have as many problems. In other cases, they have not, and they're still kind of feeling frustration. So you can see that the business and finance category has done a great job of bringing that frustration down, and so has the travel category. The retail category hasn't been able to do that quite as well yet. And so when you look at rage clicks, which I think is just a perfect terminology, and we all know exactly what that means when we hit that click button multiple times, because we think something should work. Sometimes the problem is performance. And when we dug deeper into the data, we found that that actually was the case in certain circumstances. But oftentimes it has more to do with errors like API errors, things like that. And what's challenging in the world today is how do you fix those quickly? how do you make sure that they're not creating impediments? And that's something that our clients are able to do. So perhaps our clients, which are the ones we're showing on this screen, are bringing down their frustration because they're able to see where the frustration is with quantum metrics. So let's move on to the next one. The other piece that I mentioned was this performance decrease. Peak load on travel sites in particular was 27% of support sessions with a spinning loading time. And we all know what that means too, right? That's when we see that, that wheel or the loading symbol or something that says, hey, I'm a digital front-end interface and I'm actually trying to reach my back-end interface and it's not answering me. And the reason for that has a lot to do with what's happening in the back end, actually not even at the front end of the digital property. But in order to see what the user experience is, you still have to look at it from their perspective. And that's why it's so important to be able to see what did the user truly experience during a session where they had a long spinning load time. We have found that the improvement to performance has gotten better. However, we still see about 9 to 15% of all sessions in the support area have a spinner problem, a long running spinner. So it's still out there, and in certain cases, it's getting worse as the digital impact is getting higher and higher in certain categories. Let's go to the next one. This is an indication of how long it's been taking to get a support session. When we want to think about length of time of engaging, sometimes a longer engagement is better. In many cases, if someone's shopping and they're engaged longer, they're finding more things to look at that they're interested in, that's a good thing. However, on a support page, for the most part, people want to get in, they want to get out, they have to have their questions answered. And the reality is that if it takes longer, it's not as good. Travel is doing better than anyone else at bringing those times down, which means that their user interface, the things that they're answering, the method of getting people to that answer is actually more optimized than it is in other places. These are important things right now to keep track of. So let's look at the last one. Now it's a real world example for you, Lauren, to kind of take us through what does it actually feel like to be a customer dealing with this?
Indeed, let's talk about some rage clicks. So I actually have a pretty prime example, I think. This is something that I experienced a few months back. My sister-in-law's birthday was coming up and she had recently had a baby. So I wanted to get her a necklace with her son's initials and birth date. And so I did a Google search and found a pendant necklace that I liked. After spending probably arguably way too much time testing out each and every font and adding the finished product to my cart, I got stuck. My sister-in-law's husband is currently deployed, and so they have an APO, an Army Post Office address. And the state drop down in the form to check out was required, but APO wasn't an option. And so after trying to hack the system and figure out if I could game it, I resigned to calling in and completing my purchase over the phone. So let's go ahead and spend some time. Let's take a look at how this journey might look without Quantum Metric and Invoca. So I think there are a couple of issues here, right? With current analytics technology, the online retailer can see that I came in from a Google paid search ad and they can follow my path to the different pages on the site, which is great. That's really good insight to have. They even see how long I spent on each page, but that's kind of the end of their visibility. It looks like I bailed my shopping cart, so maybe they're gonna retarget me, right? On the call side, the retailer has absolutely zero context about the marketing channel that drove me to call, who I am, or why I'm calling. They have a limited understanding of that digital journey, and there's absolutely no continuity between those two worlds. So now let's take another look at this, and let's see how this might look if we introduced Quantum Metric, Tealium, and Invoca. So I think this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. You can see that this is one journey. We've connected the dots. We have bridged that divide between online and offline. It's probably worth it to look a little bit deeper and see how each of these is working. So the first is we've got Quantum Metric that's analyzing kind of those page visits. And I think the really beautiful thing about Quantum Metric that I've recently learned is that they can really uncover insights in a scalable way. Now, what I mean by that is, sure, they're capturing my session replay and it is my session, but it's not like you're gonna have to go one by one in every single session to glean insights. They do all of this for you. And so you're able to group a subset of experiences, whether or not it might be a frustrated experience or a good experience, and you can kind of dig in and see what made it good, what made it frustrated. And so I think the interesting thing to point out with respect to my example, my experience, one of the great insights that you can see is that that font selection process and that preview is pretty annoying. Like having a drop down that you need to go and select a different font every single time can be much improved. Wouldn't it be better if there was a selector so that way you can kind of select that font option and it automatically updates the preview? Much faster, much better. I think the other place where they can help a ton is with respect to that shopping cart. So they can kind of see that frustration came about because of that state field. And so for the next visitor that comes along, they can provide that APO option. And then all of a sudden that consumer isn't stuck, which is fantastic. So if we kind of dig into the other piece, the Invoca side and the Tealium side, this is where Invoca is tying the Google Ads paid search to the phone call. But there are a lot of cool things that are happening on the site as well. So one of those neat things is that Tealium is making data from the customer profile available to Invoca at the time that visitor is on the site. So this might be useful for something like dipping in and seeing whether or not it's a repeat visitor, seeing whether or not this particular user has a dedicated representative. That information is really key and can feed the routing rules. Another piece of information that is super helpful is kind of that page that they called from. In my example, if you see that somebody called from a checkout page, clearly they're interested in sales. And so you can kind of route them directly to a sales queue versus having a standard IVR where they have to check support versus sales. The other thing I wanted to cover as it relates to this journey is the outcome of the call. So this is where the AI kicks in and we're able to kind of evaluate that transcript and understand what happened on the call so that way we can tag it. It gets super interesting when we kind of bring these worlds together and understand how they work and where everything fits in. So the first thing is Quantum Metric sends the frustration and engagement data to Tealium, and that's enriching the customer profile, which is very key. The other thing that's happening in real time, Invoca gets that data from the enriched Tealium customer profile for call routing. So that was the example that I used where you can dip and understand whether or not this is an existing customer or maybe somebody is a dedicated representative. After the call, Invoca is able to send all of our call and conversational data, including conversions, including the call recording, to Tealium, and that's going into the profile. And the nice thing is that you can use that for ad targeting, you can use it for a whole bunch of use cases. And I mentioned ad targeting because when we went through the journey that did not have Quantum Metric and Invoca, it looked like I bailed my shopping cart. So all of a sudden you're retargeting them. And that could be wasted spend, potentially. Or you can be smarter and either suppress an ad to somebody that already purchased, or maybe target them with an upsell. So that's the sort of standard story, optimization, cost savings. Then the other thing I wanted to touch on is Tealium is enriching their profile with that call interaction data and the conversions, and that's now available to Quantum Metric for that next web visit. So I think the key thing here is that for every single web or app session, for every single customer interaction, for every single phone call, you're able to continuously collect data to learn, to iterate, and adapt, which is a powerful and a beautiful thing. This is how you create great experiences that retain those happy customers and drive more conversions, which is what everybody wants, right? So I think that leads us to some key takeaways that we wanted to reiterate and give you an idea about. So the first is kind of Quantum Metric. Oh, sorry. Am I on the right slide? Yes, it's coming through. Okay. So the first thing is that businesses need to know what is working and what isn't working. This isn't driven by what the brand needs at that point in time. This is 100% driven by what customers need at that point in time. And their needs are going to change. I mean, just look at how much our needs have changed in the last 8 weeks. Being able to understand and then adapt is what translates to conversions. That translates to revenue. But this is really important. This must be backed with data. So it's important to be sure you are tracking the whole entire journey, not just what is available in the various silos that kind of organically materialize. You need to make sure that you're not only tracking a count of phone calls. You wanna track what is actually happening on those phone calls. You don't just wanna track website visits and how long somebody spent on a page and fallout. You really wanna understand what caused those frustrations and address that friction. And the key thing is to make sure that this data can be married up into a view that allows you to glean insights, right? So that's where Tealium becomes this wonderful hub. Now, the third thing is that it's important to explore avenues to get your different technologies talking to each other. Now, integrations can seem like a very scary thing, but the nice thing is that a lot of time this heavy lifting has been done for you. So I can speak from firsthand experience that Tealium, Quantum Metric, and Invoca invest heavily in our partnership teams, and our goal is really to deliver integrations that will drive value for our mutual customers. So having Tealium, again, as the hub of data that allows you to really take into account the complete customer journey is really key and very, very powerful. I can't reiterate that enough. So I think at this stage, we would like to get into some frequently asked questions. And let's see if I can figure out how to...
I've got them actually, Lauren. Let me see. We've got a list we've gathered all the things that we think you might want to know, but we probably won't cover everything, right, Lauren? So, so let me start by reading some of the one of the questions, and then we'll both answer from Invoca and Quantum Metrics perspective. The first one had to do with sensitivity of data. How do we handle privacy and security? Obviously, there's a lot of information flow here that could be considered PII. So how is it handled in Invoca, Lauren?
So on our part, we take privacy and security incredibly seriously, as a lot of companies have to these days. It is a mandate. We have a dedicated team that is really brilliant the way that they approach privacy and security, both in the security of our data and also the security of our partners. So that's the two very key things. I do want to mention that we are GDPR, SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, which are pretty big, PCI compliant, and HIPAA compliant. We have a lot of, I think you're going to touch on the fact that you have a lot of financial institution customers. We're in the same boat. I mean, if you think about the verticals that we service, it's going to be healthcare customers, it's going to be financial services, it's going to be banks, insurance providers. All of those, when you kind of sign new deals, they're going to put you through the ringer as it relates to privacy and security. And we're happy to be at the forefront of that based on all of our competitors. So
yeah, I mean, we have the same thing. We have a lot of financial and healthcare clients, and we've taken a privacy first methodology as well. And in fact, we have some patents that are unique to us that help prevent viewing of any PII information in the replays and anywhere else. And that is totally from the ground up built into the Quantum Metric system. So we make sure that everything that interacts on our system fulfills all of the requirements of all of the regulations that we have. The next one has to do with implementation. Is it complicated, Lauren? What is the process like?
So having, solutions that provide all of this amazing innovation and functionality, you would think that it would be really, really difficult to stand up. But we've worked very hard in the last couple of years to make it a very simple process where you are given a little snippet of JavaScript and you place that on your site and it does a ton of the heavy lifting for you. So it's gonna scrape your site for all of the phone numbers that are on there. It's gonna be able to dynamically replace that. It's gonna be able to route to the right destination intelligently. We're very proud of that implementation process. And we think we've made it incredibly easy for something that should be super complex.
And on our side, we have basically a one-click integration through the Tealium Tag Manager. So you can be up and running within a day if you're a Tealium user and you are using tag management. The other thing that I should say is that the integration is already set up between all of these different partnerships. As Lauren mentioned, we have been working together to make sure that this is a smooth experience. So we don't think that this implementation should be frightening at all. It's actually particularly easy relative to what you might think of as typical integrations of this scale, which brings us to the next question having to do with, this would cover multiple organizations. There's a variety of different groups that need to make sure that they all buy into this type of integrations and the technology. So we wanted to spend a minute talking about the situation with trying to get all of that organizational alignment. Lauren, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really about understanding what each department cares about, right? Your IT, your contact center team might be most interested in cost savings. And so kind of leading with the cost savings and what you might be able to realize there is prudent. On the marketing side, it might be data related. So what data are you missing? How can you be smarter about the optimizations, about the targeting that you're doing? And so I just really think that tailoring that pitch, selling Invoca internally is really important.
And from my perspective, I just showed all of the data that demonstrates how important it is to make sure that you have a perfectly well-functioning digital support product area on your website and on your mobile app. And to integrate that into the call center adds a lot more opportunity to optimize between both the high touch environment that you really want for your call center and the optimized, scalable, much more business continuity type environment in your digital products. So for me right now, it's actually probably the lowest barrier to having disagreements between whether or not this department wants that or the other department wants the other, because everyone is working towards solving problems so quickly. And so I suggest if organizational alignment can be a challenge in your larger company, try doing this right now, because right now is when it seems like it's the most important that it's going to be for a while. We have only one more minute left. And so Lauren, I just want to give you the last word. There's a question on replacing your contact call center solution if you integrate Invoca.
Thank you so much for bringing that one up. Yeah, I think it's really important to note that we plug in to your existing systems. And so you don't need to go and overhaul your whole entire contact center software, your phone systems. That is not necessary. We sort of very, very nicely sit on top.
Well, so that's it from Quantum Metric. We like to say that we're the single version of truth with proof from the customer's perspective. And Lauren?
Yes, thank you so much for joining. We can't wait to hear from you.